Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and today is the day I'm going to be releasing all my data on emblem farming. You guys are going to get to see the full breakdown of what I earned, where the currency came from, and if you guys can kind of expect similar results. So there's going to be a few quick disclaimers we need to get out of the way before the video starts. These tests were conducted over a number of different days, and some of the prices that are used in some of the earlier tests won't be accurate to today's economy. So for example, exalts were 110 a few days ago, now they're 120, so that'll look a little bit different. So if you see something that's like really out of whack, like maybe breach splinters, which were way more expensive back then, don't take too much mind to it. That's just what I sold it for back then, and you can't use the exact same logic now, obviously. The next thing is that my understanding of the mechanic in the game and my gear and knowing basically what to do, how to get faster, how to get more rewards, has grown over time. So when I was completing the three-way tests, my understanding and my character was not optimal for that situation. And if I were to go back now and do it again, I would earn far more currency doing that. So it's another thing to keep in mind. The third and final thing to get out of the way before we get into it is that a lot of the prices in terms of expenses, the prices that I bought emblems at are overvalued basically. So let's say I bought 25 Val emblems at 6 chaos, but I bought the last 5 at 7. I valued that in my spreadsheet at 7 to kind of realistically kind of say what the worst case scenario is if you bought all of them at an inflated price at the market. So basically, expenses are over exaggerated, and in most cases profits are under exaggerated wherever it's happening. I'll always undercut and stuff like that to fire sale it to get rid of stuff quickly, so it's going to be a little bit better for you if you're doing it than what is displayed in the spreadsheet. So with those disclaimers out of the way, we will get straight into the data, and I can show you guys what I made and what you might expect to make with a similar setup to me. So let's get straight into it. So let's start off with the three ways first. So again, this is when I was kind of inexperienced with the mechanic and I was still learning and figuring it out, but we will get into some super juicy details. So to begin with, we have the expenses up here. We have 25 of each of the emblems. So what's really cool about this mechanic is that's all you need. And if you want to keep chaining them, if you have some competitive buy orders up, or you find a flipper who has tons of them, and you just buy I think my record was buying 180 of one guy, you can just run and run and run and run and run and run for hours, doing these super cool, lucrative, and very good XP dungeons, which is pretty fun, and basically what I've been doing for a few days now. So there's the expenses. In this example, you can see that I listed Karui and Eternal at 7 chaos, which they're actually even cheaper than that now, and Val for 13. And again, I buy my Vals right now, I bought, I think about 70 of them today for about 10 chaos each. So this is exaggerated. These prices, these expenses are exaggerated. So that's good to keep in mind. So now, first thing I want to talk about in the revenue section is Incubators. So Incubators are the new currency in Legion, and they're kind of not given enough credit for what they are right now. I've been testing them extensively, and I have made lots of currency off just using them myself. And in some cases, I will buy them to experiment with them, but as a result of my Legion farming, I've actually gotten so many that I don't actually know what to do with them. I have a quad tab of them, and I started selling them, and turns out a lot of people want to buy them, but not just want to buy them, they want to buy them in bulk, and they're willing to pay a premium for the bulk. I'll give you an excellent example. So the Obscured Incubator, which is basically an incubator that gives you a random breach item, except that it's not that random. I'll go into a little bit of detail. So this incubator gives you either splinters, a breach stone, enriched breach stone, charged, or a pure breach stone, and it has a chance to give you a blessing. So this is definitely a very good incubator, and the people who are buying them are trying to basically get Chayula breachstones and pure Chayulas and make a profit that way. So they want to buy 100 of these things, and I charge around 5C sometimes, but most of the time I put it at 6C, and they buy all of them just instantly. So basically the upshot is here that these things are extremely lucrative for the people running them, and you get tons of them and you can bulk sell them. So all the prices listed here, they will all sell for that, apart from a few of them which I just use myself for fun. A lot of these things like the Singular, the Abyssal, Ones like this, especially the ornate, I really like the ornate. I'll just use it myself, but I have listed it here as a profit because I know that they would sell for that. So anyway, let's get straight into what we got to drop in this three-way in terms of incubators. So for the three-way, it's a fairly low-level zone. So some of the really expensive incubators, which are worth a lot of currency, like the Geomancers, which gives you a 6th link, the Time Lost, which is basically a reliquary key from Legacy, well, not from Legacy, from past leagues, the Time Worn reliquary key, which can give you a headhunter, is worth like 30, 40 something now. These don't drop in the lower domains. They just don't drop. I have 100% fact that, and if they do drop, it's like 1, and it's a time lost. The Eldritch can only drop in a suitable level zone, so it needs to be T16 viable for Eldritch to drop, and there's a few of them which have these cutoffs. So what did drop? We got Thaumaturgy, which is quality jewels like 21, 23. We got Foreboding, which is the Harbinger one. Obscured, which I spoke about, which is the Breach one. We didn't get any Celestial Jewelers, that's Shaper Jewelry. Decadent, which is Parandus, and Otherworldly, which is Unique Maps. Anyway, you get the point. Basically, we get a ton of these, and they sell very well. And we made a total of 193 chaos of selling these incubators, which is not bad. It's okay. They're pretty easy to sell. You just whack them in a tab, put a buy out, and boom, there they go. So nice and easy, nice and simple. So let's get on to currency. This is the drop you really want to have. It's liquid, it's easy, you don't have to really do anything to just use it. It just sits in your bank and you can convert it willy-nilly and everyone wants it. So we actually made a profit just off the currency alone, which is pretty cool in my opinion. We got stacked decks there. I actually cracked all the stacked decks open for fun because I had enough currency to feel like I could float enough to buy more sets. So I actually cracked those open, and I think they're worth more than a chaos because I got multiple Farrell's Fur cards just out of that 79. So I made quite a hefty profit there, but I didn't include that in this example, obviously. So I just counted it as 1 chaos each because that's what I think that I could sell them in bulk at. So another thing that we have here is Splinters and Sacrificial Fragments. So Sacrificial Fragments, again, is a nice liquid, kind of very easy to move. People buy hundreds at a time currency. And we didn't actually get too many of these in the three-way, but you'll actually see as we move on into the later examples, you start to get more and more and more insane amounts of Sac Frags, Uber Frags, Shaper Frags. It's pretty crazy. So to move on to where we made a lot more money as well, and where a lot of the profit came from, which is kind of RNG based to some extent, but we will go into it now. We have 8 unique rings for Loreweave. We had 2 Moroi Equi hammers drop, which are 10C each, but here is a big winner, and I actually believe it's underpriced quite heavily here. Yes, Lethal Pride was 22 chaos back then. Now it is 50 chaos, and I sell them all day at 50 chaos. Sometimes I'll drop it down to 45, but demand is strong. It's a melee league, and this is the melee jewel, and you get tons of them. So basically, this should be a lot higher. If I pump this up to what I sell it for now, you'll see that this goes way up, but that's inaccurate because I was selling them for 22 back then, so we will keep it that way. Anyway, you will make a ton of currency off the Lethal Pride orange jewel, and you get these pretty much every run, honestly. It's the most common jewel, and as long as you're clearing enough waves, killing enough bosses, you will get this consistently, and you'll get a lot of them. And they really do pay for pretty much most of the sets. I'm actually curious, if I bump this up to 45, does that just pay for all the sets? It pretty much it does. It pays for all the sets just off the Lethal Prides. So it's just a no-brainer to be able to do this content, and it's just really, really lucrative. But we'll bump that back down there now. So yeah, Lethal Pride, we got no Glorious Vanity, and we got 2 Elegant Hubrises. So in the three-way, we noticed this pattern, and it's consistent among a few people I've talked about, and that is that you mainly get Karui Jewels. You don't really get too many Vals, and you get very few Elegant Hubrises, which is the white one. However, this is actually a good thing, because the most expensive one, which isn't obviously the Mariketh one, is actually the Lethal Pride. So that actually makes this form of farming quite special and actually quite strong, because you get to target farm the Lethal Pride, which is pretty good. As you can see here, we got 17 jewels from 25 runs, so it's not really that great compared to the 4-way run. You don't get a jewel a jewel a run, but when you do get them, it's a very nice, and you'll feel that that value is paid back to you. And you can kind of feel like it's just a great feeling when you're like, oh, okay, that paid for the last 3 sets. It's pretty cool. Anyway, moving on past the jewels, we got a Carcass Jack, which was obviously a unique drop. We got a few unique drops, and you will find these uniques in there. They do drop because of all the loot explosions, boom, boom, boom. You do just get a lot of like one-off kind of things. Like I think we got a prime alchemic resonator once, the 4-socket resonator. Just basically anything in the game can drop in these events. Like really anything. Headhunters, all legacy items can drop in there. Like legacy, I mean by past league items. Like Xerfi's Heart can drop in there even though it's a temple item. So it's basically like opening reliquary keys, except it pays for itself, which is pretty insane. As you can see here, we got a Zoft Charge Breachstone, just lots of random things. And now one thing which I didn't include in here is the maps. So we did get quite a lot of maps. You can see here we got multiple maps per run, but due to the fact that they're low tier, and I don't think that they would be worth selling, they are not included in the final take home. So in terms of what we got here, how much profit did we make from this run? So with our revenue at 1.65k chaos and our expenses only at 675, we actually took home around 9 exalts, which is pretty good because these runs only last for 3 minutes and 15 seconds. It takes probably about a minute and a half to loot everything. And then you just whack in another set, put everything in the dump tab, and if you're buying off one of these flippers who sell hundreds of these emblems a day, then you're going to be able to buy these sets without much trouble. It's not like buying chisels, it's not hard, basically is what I'm getting at. So pretty good profit for your average player. And again, this was not with crazy gear. I had a very basic understanding of how these worked. So I would recommend for most new players, if you don't have a Headhunter, maybe you only have the Inspired, do a 3-man run, see if you can get really fast, like maybe get 7 league steps and stuff like that. I will be doing a video on how you can juice your character up for these specifically, but that won't be in this video because it's already going to be pretty long. So with that in mind, 25 maps, 9x profit. You got to sell a few things, but it's not too bad. I think this is a very effective farming method, especially because of the fact it's new, it's fresh, and it's really, really fun to do. So moving on, with that in mind, let's move on to the more difficult and more challenging, but more rewarding 4-way events. So this, in my opinion, is probably where most players should look to aim to get to. So not going for the 5 ways, but this is, in my opinion, for most players, the sweet spot, the best place to make currency, assuming you have full gear. We're saying Headhunter, we're saying Double Inspired, and you can probably do it solo. Especially if you're in a 2-man though, this is where you're going to be making the big bucks, like big bucks. And the reason for that is that it's not too difficult to obtain these sets. The Templar Emblems, they're dropping in price, surprisingly. I'm not sure why they are, but I've been bulk buying them at 38C. It's a lot harder to buy the Templar Emblems than the other 3 because it is rarer, obviously, but you are still able to bulk buy them, which is not true for Mariketh at all. I'll get into that in a second in the 5-way, but yeah. Your average player, your average farmer, you're going to be able to obtain sets for this pretty quickly, and when you run them, you're going to be rewarded. So let's get into the rewards. For starters though, let's get expenses out of the way. As you can see here, adding in Templar Emblems takes the actual buy-in cost of these sets quite high. Obviously, we spent 20 exalts on buying 25 sets of this, as opposed to the meager 7 exalts we spent in the 3-way test. So it's definitely higher risk, but higher reward if you do manage to be able to push your character to the point where you can clear this with enough rewards. And that's another thing I need to point out here. You need to be able to clear this at a speed which would allow you to get enough bars of rewards. So for the 4-way, to be able to make a reasonable profit, I would aim for 3.5 bars of rewards, which is about what we were getting in this kind of test, if possible. Now, again, with this, you can push it even further. Right now, we're farming some 4-ways to level in powers, and we were hitting 5 bars. We were hitting the loot cap with better gear on the 4-ways. So it's also very lucrative if you have big gear and you can't be bothered getting the Mariketh emblems. So what's really cool about the 4-way is that, unlike the 5-way, You get the full loot, it's visible, and you can kind of push it even further, and you can kind of progress into it. In the 5-way, you'll hit that cap pretty quickly, unfortunately, especially if you have good gear. So the 4-way might be where it's at. Anyway, let's get into the revenue of the incubators. As you can see here, if we compare 3-way and 4-way, it's actually a lot more currency from incubators this time. So we're getting significantly more of them. You can see here the numbers. We're getting a lot more of them, and we're getting a lot more of the better ones, which is really important. You can see here we picked up 2 time lost incubators in this run of 25, and those are actually increasing in price. So this is, again, like I mentioned in the start of the video, some of these things are undervalued because of the times. So yeah, you can expect to make even more currency from those time lost incubators moving forward. So no Geomancers and Eldritch. It's a bit of a pattern here, although I can state that Geomancer does drop in here. We just didn't get any in this 25 runs. So moving on though, we got a lot of these incubators we spoke about before, and I was able to bulk sell them similar to the 3-way very easily. And we get a 439 chaos from that. Moving on to raw currency. So in terms of the raw currency, we've got 7.1 exalts, and the reason it's a 0.1 because a lot of shards of currency start dropping in the 4-way as opposed to the 3-way. In the 3-way, you don't actually get too many Harbinger icons above a lot of the monsters, and this is a result of the rewards changing, the loot tables changing as you go higher and higher emblems, and this is especially the fact with 5-way, which we'll get into a second. So yeah, in terms of the exalt drops, 7.1, that's actually a pretty damn good number in my opinion. You can just extract a lot of the cost of the sets just straight out there, which is really fantastic. Just going into the expenses really quickly, again, I overvalued the Templars significantly at this time. As I said earlier, that you can get them for 38 right now in bulk. And again, the vials are overvalued as well. You can get them for 10 in bulk now. So the profit margin should be a lot larger. I just want to keep reiterating that fact that you can get more out of this. So lots of exalts, and you can see we also got lots of annuls and divines. So 4 divines, 3.5 annuls. So you're getting a lot of T1 currency items from this mechanic. That's basically 15 T1 currency items. You're going to be able to pay a lot of your buy-in back. Obviously, with T1 currencies, there's a bit of RNG. You might get 10 annuls, and then suddenly you're not making as much currency, but you just have to keep doing sets, and you'll eventually weather the RNG, and you'll end up with an even spread. In this example, we obviously got a favorable ratio of T1 currencies, but it is what it is, and it is just RNG at the end of the day. But we do also see a lot of the other currencies coming in here to stabilize the income, and you can see they're all very consistent, and it is a clear increase over the currencies in the first one. So you're getting more loot in the 4-way by a significant margin. Moving on, we're starting to see Uber fragments start to appear in this example. So these sell for a lot currently because of the Adziri axe, and they sell very quickly as well. So you can sell Uber sets very, very quickly, and you can make a lot of currency off of those sets if you do decide to sell them. In further tests that we've done after this set of 25, we actually have gotten more fragments on average than this. So this was actually a bit of an unfavorable fragment kind of set of 25. But anyway, that's the fragments that are out of the way. We also got some offerings which sell very quickly to lab runners. But one thing I do want to state here is that the fragments, they will actually carry a bit of the value as well. We have like another 2530C here, which we can knock off the entry cost. And these are just really nice and easy to sell. So we're moving on to some more interesting stuff here in my opinion. Obviously we have the unique rings for Loreweave, but now we're getting into some really juicy stuff, and that is the breakdown of jewels. We see a massive difference here from the 3-way to the 4-way. We have Lethal Pride, Glorious Vanity, Elegant Hubris, and Militant Faith now in the drop pool, as opposed to just Lethal Pride primarily, which we can see here. We actually got more Lethal Prides running 3-ways than we did 4-ways. However, you can see we have a ton more jewels, like significantly higher jewels by a massive margin in the 4-ways. It's about 4 times more jewels. Well, not quite, but about 3.5. That's an insane increase, and that justifies the price of that 4th emblem by itself, assuming you can complete 3.5 to 4 bars of loot. So right there, very fantastic, very good. Again, some of these prices might be a little bit off. We see Lethal Pride being bumped up here. Maybe Glorious Vanity is a little bit overpriced in this example. But yeah, these sell, and they are starting to sell in bulk as people catch on to the idea that they actually need to buy a lot of these to get a good one. So you can sometimes sell 10 of these at once, and that's pretty nice as well. Moving on, another really cool thing that happens in these encounters is a lot of 6-link uniques drop, and that is kind of a pattern which you'll see as you play through them. A lot of 6 links drop, and it's kind of RNG. We got a Terminus S here, which sold for 348 chaos, which was definitely a nice big bump to the bottom line. This is pure RNG though, unfortunately, so it will obviously be, maybe you get a 6-link Shavs, and that's really insane for you guys, but maybe you don't get one and you get like a 6-link, I don't know, like Quill Rain. That sucks. But yeah, RNG, but it's there. It has to be accurate. Next up, you start getting Beachheads around this point, T15, and these are consistently dropping in my tests. Like, they actually drop from the specific Harbinger icon mobs. So you can expect to get a lot of these, and in the 5-way, I think we actually got 2 or 3. So they are another consistent form of income from running these, and they sell very well, and they sell in bulk as well. So obviously you get some other unique maps here, and then you also do get some divination cards. We got a very lucky void battery as well, which we were able to sell, and we start seeing the introduction of fossils. So there's not too many fossils in 3-ways, and that's why they weren't included, but in the 4-ways you do start to see a lot of the fossil nodes, which again is a reoccurring pattern. The rewards are more league focused in the 4 and 5-way as opposed to just generic in the 3-way. So you're going to start getting some fossils, and these sell like insanely quickly. Like, you put them in, boom, you're getting whispers already, and they sell in bulk again. So you can get a lot of currency here, and you're starting to see some very big numbers down here. Indeed, just the incubators and the currencies dropped all of the expenses for us, so we were out in the clear, and then we got all of this for free, which we got to take home as profit, which was pretty damn cool. And then of course we have the maps over here, but again, maps suck this league. They don't sell well, they're tedious to sell, so they're not included in this example. So profit, let's take a look. We made 4,000 chaos in revenue. That's 40 exalts if everything sells, which is pretty damn good in my opinion. And we also had that expense of 20 exalts. So we take home around 19x, which is pretty damn cool. And I actually subsequently invested this exalts into a 20% quantity amulet, Eye of the Great Wall. But anyway, that's another story. So yeah, we're definitely seeing some big money from these, and if you're looking to maybe push your build with the Headhunter and acquire some new cool toys, or just stack up some currency, maybe get a mirror, this is definitely an excellent option to do so. So now we're moving into the big leagues. The really tough stuff, the stuff you need that gear for, you might need that support for as well, to really get it going, and that is the 5-way emblems. So since doing this test, Mariketh emblems have increased in price from 65 to 80, but you can still buy splinters with a buy order for the 65 point on the emblem. So it's a little bit interesting, but these emblems, the Mariketh ones, are very difficult to get a hold of. And in this particular scenario, we actually have a this is actually a little bit wrong here. I copy and pasted stuff in my spreadsheet earlier, so we'll just quickly fix that up to do all the styles to make it look pretty for you guys. But there we go. We actually have a massive expense of 5,439 chaos. So that is a very big buy-in. That is almost 60 exalts, and that is going to be very out of reach for a lot of players. And I would caution most people who want to try and run these to try and make sure you're hitting the 5 bars of loot every time. It's very important because the rewards from these are very good. You start dropping T16 maps, fragments, all these kinds of things. You want to hit that full 5 bars of loot every time so you can get the maximum amount of value out of your very expensive set. Another thing to mention with the 5-ways is that the EXP is completely insane. I would put it close to the level of pure Chayula breaches, just because of the quantity of monsters and the fact that it's not time gated like pure Chayula is. So the XP per hour is insane, and because of that you can level Empower gems, which will actually almost cover a lot of the set cost if you get level 4s by itself, but that's a different video. Again, this is getting too long already. So it's a big buy-in, that's the point. But the rewards are definitely there, and we will get into those rewards right now. And I believe we actually got quite unlucky with our rewards, but we will go into that now. So now let's get to the incubators. We're seeing a massive number down the bottom here, 1.5k chaos from incubators, and a lot of that is from Geomancers, Time Lost, and Eldritch. So basically, I'll give a quick breakdown. Geomancer is the 6 link, Time Lost is the legacy item, but Eldritch is basically an Elder map. So you can see here we basically got 8 additional T16s from those incubators. So one thing I will mention here though is you want to sell these because it's a random T16, and selling T16s individually just from anywhere in the atlas sucks. So sell these to other people so they can run them and they can do something, and maybe underprice them a little bit so that they make a bit of money. That is my kind of advice. We also see here Foreboding and Obscured. We see a massive amount of increase here. We see over 4 times the amount of Foreboding and double the amount of Obscured, because obviously we ran more maps, but because also more just drop in these scenarios. So definitely very interesting. We got a lot of different stuff here. Just so much, I won't go through it, but yeah, a big number down here at the bottom. Now, something pretty interesting here is the increase in amount of T1 currencies that we're dropping. We got 11 annulments. We got 13 divines and 14 exalts. Quite a nice spread there, so no RNG skewiness. But you will see that's a massive increase over what we got earlier in this run here. So that's 7 plus 4, that's 11 plus 3.5, whatever. That's like 15. So we saw an over double, yeah, 14. You get the point. Even with the increased amount of runs, you're getting a lot more T1 currencies from 5 ways, which is pretty interesting. And you're seeing a massive amounts of fusings, chaos orbs, alchemy, all that kind of stuff. Just tons and tons and tons of loot drops. It's insane. And you're going to make a lot of your basic amount of buy-in just back from these 2 things. Again, this is a recurring theme among all of these things. Anyway, let's get into the next part, the splinters. So splinters, the actual breach stones, all that kind of stuff, it's in the toilet right now because of the obscured incubators. Basically, the obscured incubators just dump tons of breach stones onto the floor. So these are going to be basically worthless, even though we did get a lot of them. Now, I have just not put in the individual breach stones because it's a pain, but if you see like 331 ash, that's because we got 3 ash breach stones. So you can see here that they're basically worthless anyway, so that's that. Moving on, we got an absolutely mind-blowing amount of sack frags. Like, absolutely absurd. It's obscene how many sack frags we got. We got hundreds of chaos worth of sack frags, and they sold instantly, which is pretty cool. So it's very hard not to make money here if you're getting that full 5 rows of rewards. Again, we're seeing some mortal frags here, which is pretty cool. We got offerings from Elab, and we've also obviously also got some shaper fragments which started dropping as well, which will also add a little bit of revenue. So moving on, we have a massive section here on like kind of unique, kind of one-off kind of drops here. Obviously we have the jewels. We got over 100 jewels from this, which is absolutely insane. And a lot of these, again, sell very quickly if you're willing to kind of like have a lot of them. And you know a few people who are looking to buy a lot of them. But yeah, a lot of value is extracted from those jewels, which is very, very good. And then obviously there's also the chance at very good higher item level Elder and Shaper bases. We got an Elder Astral Plate which sold for over 10 exalts, around 11 exalts, which was a lot of currency as well. So I won't go too much into detail here because this video is getting very long. But also we see a massive amounts of fossils. We get over hundreds of fossils, like 200 plus fossils. Just from this, which is crazy. We can see here we have miscellaneous fossils, which is like frigid, scorch and stuff like that. Sell them in bulk, 1C, get rid of them. We had 164 of them, and we got like pristine, all that kind of stuff. So there's lots there. You're gonna get a lot. There's just a lot. The next thing is kind of things that you should be a little bit careful about, and that is steel rings, opal rings, like all of the eye jewels. These things, if people do these 5-way runs and just dump them onto the market, you can see we got 3586 Modus jewels. That's going to crash the price completely. I was able to sell mine because I'm in pretty early, but I imagine that these won't be a factor in further revenue reports, just purely from the fact that they're just going to be dumped into oblivion by having too many of them. Also, we got some one-off ones like you can see here. I'll link this spreadsheet in the description below. But anyway, we also got maps here, which T16 maps, you know, whatever. And we will go now to the overall. We also got scarabs, so there's just so much stuff here. This is gonna be a long video. We got over 100 scarabs, like hundreds of scarabs basically. I think it was around 200 scarabs, which is pretty insane. They're worth pretty much nothing right now though, so 388 chaos from that. Basically just getting a ton of stuff is the upshot here. So with revenue, we had 12,100 chaos worth of revenue, and we had 5,439 of expenses. So that actually leaves us with a profit of 6,700 chaos, which is 58 exalts. Now, we didn't include the maps here, but this is starting to get to the point where you can include them because it has stuff like T16s, like Guardians. They sell very quickly and in bulk. So we did actually include the map price here. Obviously, most of that is made up from Guardians. So with that, you can actually see we made a profit of 64 exalts, which is a lot of currency, an obscene amount of currency. And the thing is with this is we didn't even get the Marrakech jewel. Not one, not one jewel out of 100. That's unfortunate, but it is what it is. That jewel, if we got that, we would have been over 100 exalts of profit, which is absolutely disgusting. The jewel is currently sitting around 30 exalts, and I think it justifies the price because it's so rare. Anyway, with all that out of the way, what is the best thing for you to farm, and should you farm it? Obviously, there's a lot of rewards in the 5 ways. The rewards are pretty good in the 4 ways, but what should you farm? So I think it really depends on your personal character, your personal amount of currency that you have to spend on these sets, and just kind of what you're trying to get out of the game. So if you're just trying to have fun with mechanic and you're just trying to make a bit of currency and you don't have a headhunter, you don't have the inspired learnings or anything like that, I would recommend the 3 ways. Try and get really good at them. Try and get really quick. Add in some movement speed to your build. Try and do all that kind of stuff. Try and one-shot the bosses. Now, if you have the headhunter, you have some inspired learnings, you got the tornado shot going, maybe you don't have a support, maybe you want to put a shaped bow on that, you can go ahead and do the 4 ways. You'll make a lot of currency out of them. Now, if you have the duo 2-man team, massive amounts of currency base, just tons and tons of currency to spend, you've got the max gear, everything, you should do the 5 ways. They're the most currency I've ever made from doing something. It's obscene. There's no other word but obscene. And that's gonna be it. Obviously, this is probably like a big capstone on my experiences with this. It'll probably be one of the last videos on this specific type of mechanic. I might do a few more teaching you guys how to kind of like get your character to the point where you can do these. But that's gonna be the breakdown. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.